Okay, it's Mayo Say, back yet again with the Mayo Say! Today, we will be tackling a very complicated topic that may or may not get me censored if the FBI pays attention to this video. Social media, the gateway to the world beyond this, and a means to access information that would have otherwise been unavailable to us. It has been the birthplace of my closest friendships, and a means for me to understand others in a better manner. However, growing up through the US educational system, I have recently been given many articles alongside my classmates on the dangers of these platforms. Granted, these were only really tailored towards our mental health, and the generic approach to the subject with only one perspective on the matter, primarily adults, has been something that's made me roll my eyes. I've passively completed these assignments, thoughtfully looking at the information and applying it to my own life. Let me tell you, only one of them worked, and it was only because my English teacher was like a cool dude, and he knew me in freshman year, and I got that article in the sophomore year. The method I implemented was the detox method, a means to take a break from your devices, if possible, to kind of root yourself back into the real world for a bit. And I respected that, because it at least hinted at balancing it, you know? But to the main topic. Recently in my Gov class, we were told to watch a video on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, or something like that. I only watched half of it before skimming the rest to see that, although providing new information, executed it in a terrible way, and I'm here to kind of tell you from a teenager's perspective why the execution is going to detriment how a child sees it. So, if you guys are on Netflix, or are too nice to find it off of some rinky-dinky website, I'll give you a journal synopsis of the documentary. That is an hour and a half long. The documentary flips between dramatizations of the addictive effects of social media, and the words of former higher-ups from companies such as Google, Facebook, and other places. Between these changes, I'll say that the movie's ethos is stronger than its pathos, with that literally meaning that the words of those higher-ups is more compelling than the acting done in other bits. Beyond the sad fact that corporations have capitalized off of our lives and interests, and the curiosity for exploring things that are now easily within our reach and interests, the film goes back to the more commonly mentioned aspect of how social media degrades the self-esteem of a person, and creates complicated mental health issues, and even suicidal tendencies. Now, these are not bad points, they're very good, and relevant to folks today. Maybe not so much for me as it could be for some others, and directly these might have affected me, but to the same extent, not so severely. But let's get to the dramatizations, the worst part about the documentary. It is tone deaf! It only really provides one perspective. So there's a family, a mom, a dad, and I believe 3 kids. The eldest child doesn't have a phone and prefers to read a book. The mother uses a tablet and sparingly sends a video to the younger 2 children to highlight how dangerous and addictive their devices are. The younger 2 children are unreasonably addicted to their mobile devices. Like, it's so unrealistic to the point that I can't even believe that the kids I assume are addicted would act like that. Like, you know, at school, you always see that one kid, or maybe you are that kid, that kind of peeks at their phone a little too much during class and misses out on the whole thing. Maybe your teacher sucks, maybe they don't, but at the same time, you're still kind of missing out on certain things. I mean, I can understand that, but the way that these kids were addicted to it was a little iffy, you know? It's like, For example, the mother is worried about her kids and makes her family give her their phones, putting them away in a jar for an hour to spend some quality time. This would have made a lot of sense, but the mother doesn't come across as someone you want to root for because of the only thing she comments as soon as she sits down on the dinner table is,
"So, what do you want to talk about?"
While her younger 2 children are trying to process the fact that they are unable to tinker with their phones at the table. I mean, look, I don't condone excessive usage either, but I couldn't root for anybody. The youngest daughter lies and says that she forgot something and walks to the counter where the phones are stored in one of those jars with a timer on them. She tries opening it with her hands, but after she's told that the timer won't let her open it till after an hour, she takes a hammer and smashes the jar open. This in turn breaks the screen of her brother's phone, and she runs upstairs with her mobile device in hand. Now, the stupid thing is, the mother tells her husband to go talk to the daughter. Like, I get that maybe it's because the daughter could feel safer with the parent she doesn't have grievances with, but the father wasn't even involved in it. It wasn't his idea. He had his phone taken too, but didn't complain about it. And now he's the one responsible for talking to the daughter who ran up? Then, after the son promises not to touch his phone for a week, in the exchange where his mother replaces the broken screen on his phone, the room is empty, except for the oldest daughter who sarcastically hollers, "Good family dinner!" that. And shortly afterwards, it cuts away to teen children of the former bigwigs and psychologists talking about how much screen time they use.
Upwards hour and a half.
Okay, I listened to a screen report a couple weeks ago and it was like 3 hours and 45 minutes.
And yeah, I guess 3 hours is a bit concerning, but it depends on the circumstances, I guess. It's also just terribly insensitive that the documentary was released during the time of this pandemic. According to the wiki, it was released in January at the Sundance Film Festival, but not a lot of people may have paid attention to that. I mean, like, it's a film festival. Some people just may not be interested enough to go there. In September, it was available to stream off of Netflix. Like, they had a choice in when to release it. I only really say this because the usage of the internet has gained a greater role in our lives since quarantine began. We use social media and the internet in general to do our work. Connect with friends without endangering ourselves, and trying to find entertainment and meaning when going outside isn't an option. And even then, the documentary glosses over certain situations in which the internet could be the only escape. Sometimes, yes, we get sucked into the internet without proper supervision, and we're spoiled and careless, but I don't recall the documentary considering what the internet could have meant for someone being abused in some way, finding solace and finding people who support them. Or perhaps someone who was in the closet and knew that their family would be violent to them in some way if they expressed their identity. In the context of this film and the dramatization, it comes across more like it's the mother's fault for not better supervising her children and getting her children their phones at a certain age, and now they're stuck to it. She comes across as tone-deaf and irresponsible, as the phone-addicted kids are fake. In fact, I got my first phone when I was 12 because I was going to be in a new area where I had to take the bus and needed to communicate if I were to be inconvenienced by delays or changed plans. The downside was I was told not to use social media, and that was the only warning I was ever given. They're like telling your kids not to drink alcohol, and they're going to get curious about it, and maybe find ways to use it secretly without someone's permission. I personally felt like the better option would have been if my parents let me, but told me to be careful, and come to them if I needed help. The openness to communicate would have definitely helped children like myself identify if I'd encountered something and reacted to it appropriately, especially if it was disturbing. I mean, I try not to be okay, but still, it was difficult getting socially adjusted. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as I still haven't forgotten their issues on polarization. Literally, the first part of the intro plays clips from news stations, which sometimes mention the phrase fake news. Now, that term has been jokingly tossed around since Trump coined it to address CNN's accusations of him a couple of years ago, but I feel like to a certain extent it's still relevant when recontextualized. Fake news is fake because it falsely twists a narrative to aid someone in a usually selfishly motivated ambition in the world. A good example of this is controversy over things as heartbeat bills, cases of homophobic legislation, and especially the unnecessarily complicated bout of Black Lives Matter. I'll take the latter as a good example. Throughout Twitter, there have been many cases in which those who are skeptical of the movement end up cutting clips from videos from filmed protests and cherry-picking moments to fit into their narrative. And then the whole video gets published and the original poster is exposed as a liar. This not only hints at a sad reality that our government seems to hate us and doesn't want to take action, but also that so many things can be said, taken out of context, and shaped into a creation that backhands the entire purpose of the statement trying to be shared. Although we have the luxury to receive information quickly, the double-edged sword of convenience also yields the possibility for these sources we rely on so much to end up being twisted. Thankfully, social media isn't like a streaming service where many watch all. We all watch each other and see multiple points of view. We can see footage taken by real people who, although could still lie, are a greater source of truth to some degree. And that's the sort of nuance social media is. Now, into less social matters, it is abhorrent that our lives have been filled with nothing but ads. That people read our thought patterns to get us invested into certain things that may not even mean much to us in the long run. I'll give the film credit for that, especially where there have been controversies of companies selling user data so ad companies can flush crummy mobile games down your eye socket into your brain like the toilet they made it out to be. And don't forget how the algorithms of these sites make it a nightmare for artists to get their things and have it get noticed. They have to constantly adapt and evolve with something they can't predict and have to take blank shots at. You know how YouTube gave Markiplier a strike for no reason? How Instagram artists struggle to figure out how to stay relevant despite already exerting all their effort to build a following? How Twitter crops art and makes it look gross, although that function was exploited for memes. It doesn't really give an opportunity for small people to become big until someone else who's big notices them and the cycle continues. But that in of itself is also a rare venture because they might want to suppress certain things to keep certain companies and their advertisements on top. The point in regards to the less social concerns about social media, ironically, are the strongest point of this film. It's truly the hidden secrets that people pull behind our screens that renders us weakened to the influences of irresponsibly monitored digicapitalism. I've been getting really annoyed by how even Gardenscapes advertises a "Can you solve this?" game instead of the match 3 it really is. I'll admit, I've fallen victim to some of these things. On Instagram, I saved a cute Harajuku stuff in the hopes of maybe purchasing it in the future. But to be completely honest, I could do without. I purchased a pair of boots off of AliExpress once, and the material was freakishly cheap. What was I expecting? I purchased a glass bottle with cute constellations on it off Amazon, and had the pattern peel off as soon as I put it under cold water. Generally, they have found my soft spot, which frustrates me. Once the whole pandemic blows over, I'm just gonna go back to browsing in malls. It's exercise. It gives you the opportunity to view products firsthand, which makes me miss the great mall in Milpitas. COVID, please end. I want to go back to Milpitas. But back on point! There is an aura of cynicism to this, and I think we as a group of self-aware individuals should collectively be aware of this sort of thing, much more than what we are told generically in classes. Yes, social media has a good opportunity to allow a vulnerable, impressionable child to feel insecure about something, or have a misconception about an idea, and carry it out for the rest of their lives. But being smart enough to balance it is also a major part of living nowadays. The articles that tell you to break up with your phone, or to remove social media from your life, have never really gone over this idea of balance. Completely removing something that's obviously integrated itself from your life, and isn't completely harmful, in my personal opinion, is difficult, and would make you resistant in letting go of it. You can still coexist with social media after all, you just need to stay in touch for work, and to make sure you can embolden yourself with friends. You just have to moderate it. Getting sucked into a world of confusion and maybe even disillusion is obviously not fun, so this is just my small recommendation to not wholeheartedly believe those stupid articles your English teacher might give you during class about why you should ditch your phone. Yet, at the same time, see if maybe there's a way you can apply some of the advice into your life without it completely destroying your values and how you want to operate it. Sometimes doing a task, even if it's hard to get moving at first, kind of throws you into the real world in a nice way. It's like being able to hang out with your friends after using social media to make plans you did with them. It's the back and forth process where you end up feeling fulfilled because you did something, and you still have the opportunity to talk about it and connect, even when far apart. Now that we aren't really allowed to be near folks without a mask, or go to certain venues without being really cautious, this is obviously a limit. But this isolation can give us an opportunity to find new things to do at home, and perhaps find other ways to moderate our time without constantly being dragged into the mobile device. However, I also want to acknowledge that maybe social media is all someone has, and there is little room to be able to do certain things if your household is restrictive on what you may be interested in pursuing. To those who cannot do much and use social media as a respite until they're able to escape their situation, I wish you the best of luck and send you my love. Mwah. I feel like the two main points of the film ended up being the more commonly mentioned bad for self-esteem idea, and the less mentioned, but equally important, those freaks are selling your data and letting advertisements pick you like a prospecting cook in a fishing market. The dramatizations again were the weakest point, and I'm sure my peers would also think that the idea that they tried to communicate fell incredibly flat. The dialogue was pretentious. None of the characters were able to give us realistic morals and ideas we didn't know. It was literally all or nothing, and the only good character was the father because he wasn't overly concerned with phones like his wife was. He was a good example of moderation. He's just vibing, bro. He knows how to meme. He seems pretty chill. He can know his limits, you know, and his kids and wife are like two opposite sides of the spectrum. Like, The rest of the documentary drizzles around understandable points that make sense to seasoned users, but leave out certain details that end up villainizing the platform as a whole. I'm not saying every single thing is wholesome or that it's terrible. It's a double-edged sword. You can be enriched with new ideas and information with what you see. But it'll definitely be concerning if you're like that one dude who spent too much time reading Reddit to take care of his baby. It's real. It's in a documentary. If I'll get like the screenshot of the guy. He'll probably be in the video. Yeah, that's him. This man searched on Reddit and he had a baby. I'm also willing to bet that maybe younger folks simultaneously are used to and struggle with abandoning social media like the adults recommend that we do. It is because we were raised in an era where these things were already present. Maybe, and this is just a conjecture, to adults who didn't know what the internet was around our age, phones still hold a place in their brain where the internet, social media, mobile devices are forever novel in their brains. Maybe the excitement of finding out new things that contrasted so much from their youth might be it. To the same degree, though, I've seen children who have been completely raised by curios, iPads, and other tablets to entertain themselves. And yet, I believe that's probably more along the lines of irresponsible or just unavailable parenting. After all, the parent is the one who bestows the child with the device. Depending on how you were introduced into this sort of thing and how you adjusted to it, there is a chance that you're better suited to navigating these waves better than a good chunk of adults. However, I hope that you would still advise caution. Most of the folks who may be watching this would probably be minors, and I'd advise as someone who's been on the internet for almost 7 years to be incredibly careful. Back to the documentary! Towards the end, the former bigwigs predict what will happen if social media is not regulated in a manner which will provide more freedom to the consumer. Some predicted civil war of all things. I mean, with how politics is becoming so divisive during a time where we are already stressed from how our government has responded to a pandemic, human rights cases, and even the transferal of the president's own power, it is hard for people to find ways to cope and find solutions to these grandiose problems. We cannot afford to take certain baby steps to achieve a common goal anymore in those cases, and we're the ones left responsible in correcting a system that should have aided us. Social media gives us an out to vent, and yet be censored. Meet friends, but also make enemies. Dream big, but also be crushed hard. Life is very much the same way, but social media adds an extra dimension, and gives us the opportunity to live second lives. This gets mixed up in the lives we live in today, and affects us on certain levels, I guess. In short, I understand those fears, concerns, and predictions, and I have every right to address it. The film is informational and insightful in some areas, but lacking in others. Unaware of the additional benefits and drawbacks that social media can have on minors and adults. Personally, I was not too moved by it, considering that the execution of certain points is what made me disinterested in the film. I will still recommend it for additional insights, but I feel like you could still get the same, if not more, information off of a briefly written article or post by someone off of the internet. Thank you for watching this strange video. This is kind of like a movie review, I suppose. I'm not one to do so, but I guess the constant phone bad narrative with unrelatable evidence being slammed into my skull was so bothersome that I just had to say something in this time. And with this being said, if you are 18 or will turn 18 before it is time for the voting to conclude, I guess, I suggest that you all go out and do so. I am the latter. I'm 17, but I'm turning 18 in a couple of weeks, and I sure as heck am going to place my vote, so that way, perhaps, I can better my circumstances and the circumstances of others in this country. So this is just a little nudge forward, so that way y'all can make a decision. And I wish you all the best of luck. Hope y'all are safe. Have a good day. And please take care of yourselves. Hopefully you're surrounded by good friends, good family, good company that will keep you and your spirits high. And yeah, stay safe. This is Mayo Say signing out. Whoop!